الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد عن معاذ بن أنس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من كظم غيظا وهو قادر على أن ينفذه دعاه الله عز وجل على رؤوس الخلائق يوم القيامة حتى يخيره الله تعالى منه الحور ما شاء أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب زدني علما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. Hadith number 23 in the chapter of Sabr. Mu'adh bin Anas radiallahu anhu is the narrator of the hadith. Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, the son of Anas from the tribe of Juhni. He used to live in Egypt. And we have a hadith narrated from Mu'adh radiallahu anhu and also a few hadith narrated by his own son, Suhail radiallahu anhu also. And the narrations can be found in books of ahadith such as Muslim Ahmad, Nasai, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah and Tirmidhi. Around 30 to 35 ahadith narrated by Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. This hadith, he narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that man kadhama ghaydan, the person who suppresses anger, وهو قادر على أن ينفذه, and at that time or in such time where he was in a position of following up his anger, carrying out the anger, he had the full power and full ability to do whatever he wanted. But in that situation, in that moment, he held back, he controlled himself. دعاه الله عز وجل على رؤوس الخلائق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call him on the day of judgment in front of the creation, and he will be told حتى يخيره الله عز وجل من الحور ما شاء, that choose any of the hur that you may wish. In this hadith, the main lesson is about sabr at the time of anger. Many times, naturally, we get frustrated, we get angry, different causes, different reasons, and depending on the moment, if the person is under your guardianship, under your control, who is younger than you, who is weaker than you, then that person at that time, when he's frustrated, when he's angry, he shows that frustration, he shows the anger. He will do whatever he wants. He may lash out, he may verbally hurt the person. He will do whatever he wants. Why? Because he has that power. He's above the other person. And another situation where the person has made him angry, but he's older than him, he's more stronger than him. He may be his manager, he may be his teacher, he may be the head. He's angry, but he doesn't have the power and the ability to express his anger. So he controls himself. So there's two types of people, but here the hadith is related to the first type of person who has a full power. قَادِرٌ عَلَىٰ أَن يُنْفِذَهُ, meaning he has a full ability to express and show his anger and do whatever he wants at that time. And there will be nobody to question him. The other person won't question him, the other person has no power to do anything to him. But in that situation, in that time, in that moment, he puts pressure on his mind, he puts pressure on his body, he controls his emotions, and he keeps himself in control. He doesn't, because of that anger, do whatever he wants. He rather calms down and he cools down. He either, practices upon those steps that were mentioned from our internal and external, according to the Quran and the Hadith, and he controls himself. Now, because he had the full ability to do whatever he wanted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that deed is so beloved to him that on the Day of Judgment He will be called in front of every person, every human. The whole creation will be there, present. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call him in front of everyone. And He will say that, look at this quality that he had. That he had the ability and he had the power to do everything. But he didn't oppress any servant of mine. He didn't hurt any creation of mine. He was mindful of my creation. So because of this, I will call him in front of everyone and I will give him many rewards. And one of the reward is this, that in Jannat he will be able to marry whoever he wants. From the hur, whoever he wishes, he will be able to marry and choose. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us that we have to have sabr and patience at this moment as well, where we are tested, and the test may be because somebody has hurt you physically, or somebody has took your wealth, somebody has, did a false accusation against you. Whatever, it may be anything, it may be related to yourself, to your family member. So that's a trial and that's a challenge. That's a moment of sabr for you. So if a person controls his anger and he exercises sabr and is able to control himself, he control his anger, then in return, in reward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him this reward. So here, Imam Tibi rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions that a person, he lets go of the reason for that anger. The reason for that anger, whatever is causing that anger, he moves away from it. He controls that. Then in return, he is granted this reward. And also at the same time we learn is our nafs. Our nafs, our soul has different categories, has different levels. One is that evil nafs ammara, that incites and drives a person towards evil all the time. It drives the person towards evil all the time. That's the worst type of nafs. So if a person is still on that beginning level and is taken towards evil and towards sin and towards disobedience, then what will happen is that his nafs will control him. But here in this situation, when he's made angry, he is able to hold back that soul. He's able to control that soul. He's able to keep that soul in control and the nafs in control. So now, because he is able to control his nafs, then he will move on to the higher stage. He'll move on to the next stage, where he'll come into that stage where the nafs might drive him towards evil, might drive him towards disobedience, but he will have more control compared to the bottom level and the beginning level. At the beginning level and the worst level, a person doesn't have control. The nafs controls him and the soul controls him and always taking him towards evil. But this is one situation and one occasion where if you are made angry, we control our anger. We control our nafs. We control our soul. Now, if we are going to control our soul and we control our nafs, then that nafs ammara will come into our control. Now we come to the second stage where he may take us towards evil. He may, put thoughts of evil. But now we're able to have some control of it. So we won't end up doing that sin. We won't end up going towards disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us that at the time of challenge and trial and tribulations, at the time of challenges and trials, make sure you have sabr and control your anger. And we have many examples in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned few in our previous dars. Like this, we have the Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu. Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu. Sometime even the Sahaba radiallahu majma'in would follow the anger, carry out the anger. Even Akabir as well and our pious predecessors, sometimes they would follow that anger. And sometimes they would control the anger. Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu, somebody came and insulted him, swore at him. And he replied that if my scales on the Day of Judgment, the scale of sins more heavier, then I am worse than what you're already saying to me. However, you're insulting me right now, I am more worse than what you're insulting me right now if my scale of sins is heavier. Meaning, I have failed, I am unsuccessful. So what you're saying to me is nothing. I'm actually a failure, it is worse than this. But if my scale of good deeds is heavier, if my scale of good deeds is heavier on the Day of Judgment, then whatever you're saying to me doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. Why? Because I'm a successful person. So whatever you want to say, however you want to insult me, it it's not going to make a difference to me. It's not going to make a difference to me. Like this, Rabi' bin Khaythan rahmatullahi alayh, again, similar situation where he was also sworn at, and he said something similar, that if I end up in Jahannam, Allah protect us, then whatever you've said, I'm worse than that. I'm unsuccessful. But if I end up into Jannat, and I end up in being a successful person, then whatever you've said doesn't make a change. It doesn't make a difference at all. So it doesn't make a difference at all. So like this, once Rasulullah, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was walking. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was walking, and he was reprimanding his servant. So behind him, he heard a voice. He heard a voice that "I'lam Aba Mas'ud, I'lam Aba Mas'ud," that "O Aba Mas'ud, no, O Aba Mas'ud, no." So when he heard this voice, he stopped and he thought that, what is this voice? Who is this person? Then he heard that "Allahu aqdaru alayka minka alayhi," that this person who was behind him, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more power over you than you have power over this servant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more power over you than you have power over this servant. So when he heard this statement, he stopped himself and he turned around, and he was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's telling him that you think that, he may have disobeyed you once. This is the understanding from this. The servant, out of 10 tasks that he may have been given, he may have completed 8 of them, and 2 of them he hasn't done. Now because of them 2 tasks that he hasn't completed, you think that he's disobeying you and he's showing the anger on you. We as weak Muslims and weak people, weak servants of Allah, think in our own life, how many times do we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many times do we break the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many times do we actually deserve the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So if a person has this in mind, that look, I am angry at my student, I am angry at this person because he has disobeyed me. He hasn't done any favor on me. He hasn't granted me life. He's not sustaining me. He's not giving me the ability to breathe. He's not giving me, guidance. So why am I showing anger to him? There's no favor upon me. Whereas my Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me life, He has given me health, He has given me wealth, He has given me the ability to speak and ability to eat and breathe and etc. He's done so many favors upon me. Don't you think that if I was to disobey Him, He should show anger upon me and take punishments immediately and make me punish me straight away? So if a person has this in mind, that I have very limited control over the person, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete control over me. If I was to express my anger now, that's temporary punishment or temporary harm. What if on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns around and says that, look, you disobeyed me all of these times, even though I favored you all of these, with all of these things, and you disobeyed me, let me show you my anger now. How will we feel at that time if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows anger upon us on the Day of Judgment? So if a person has this mind in his mind, he'll be able to control his anger. He won't, allow the shaitan to, hurt the other person. So this is something that we need to learn, that at the time of difficulty, we take control of ourselves, have sabr and control our anger. Imam Hadith Maulana Shaykh Thani rahmatullahi alayhi, once somebody came and started to insult him and swore at him. Maulana Shaykh Thani rahmatullahi alayhi, he didn't say anything. He stayed calm and he looked down and he didn't respond. The person left the gathering, and most likely he is related to Maulana Shaykh Thani rahmatullahi alayhi. The person went out and he passed away. He died. So somebody came to him and he said that you killed him. You killed him. So he said that, how did I kill him? I didn't say anything. I didn't touch him. So here he said that, look, he insulted you and you didn't respond and you didn't say anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in return took revenge because of your friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So meaning they're trying to say that sometime, as Mufti Shabir Sahib, Mufti Shabir Damat Barakatuh mentioned on Saturday, sometime a pious person may express his anger, may show you that he is angry, he may say something to you, he may make you do something, but that is not to harm you, that's actually beneficial for you. And he gave the example in that gathering on Saturday about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Close to his demise and death, he fell ill. So he refused the medication. He said, don't give me medication. However, when he was unconscious, somebody fed him that medication. When he got unconscious again, he realized that he was fed medication. And he asked, who gave me the medication? So whoever was there present said that these individuals have given you medication. Rasulullah ﷺ was angry and he said, give him the medication as well. Give them the medication as well. So the Mufti Shibli Sahib mentioned that, look, we learned that Prophet ﷺ never ever took revenge for himself. He never showed anger for himself. Whenever he showed anger or whenever he took revenge, it was only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of violation of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here it seems like he took, revenge for himself, that he was fed the medication. Now in return he's saying that feed these individuals the medication. So the Mufti Sahib mentioned a very, easy to understand. He said, here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually did a favor. If he didn't do that, if he didn't make them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in return would have responded and would have done something. So to save them from a greater danger and greater harm, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did that. So sometime we will learn and we will hear that a pious person got angry as well. But their anger must be a wisdom behind it and reason behind it. But we should think of the situation. If our anger is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not for the right purposes, then we shouldn't follow our anger, we should control ourselves. When we control ourselves and we have that sabr, one benefit is that we're able to control our soul. We're able to control our nafs. And that's very important. The more in your control of your nafs, the easier for us to stay away from sins. We are in control of the nafs, then we will be able to be inclined towards the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than the other individual whose soul is controlling him. When the soul is controlling the person, when the nafs is controlling the person, then he will always incline towards evil and towards disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the main important lesson we learn is that we need to, at the time of the difficulty, have sabr, control our anger, think of the steps in order to control our anger, think of the point that we mentioned today, that I might have a bit of control over this person, he may have disobeyed me, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete control over me. I have disobeyed him 20, 30, 40 times a day. Now imagine if he was to take revenge, what would happen to me? So if a person has that in mind, then he'll be able to also control his anger as well. And we also learnt about the rewards in this world and inshallah in the hereafter as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept many rewards. And we also learn from this is that we shouldn't insult or hurt any pious individual. Why? We could ourselves put ourselves in danger. We could put ourselves in danger. That pious person might not respond. But because of the level and the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take revenge. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to take revenge, then there's nobody to save us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the correct understanding and the ability to have sabr and control our anger and express anger in the correct moment, the anger which is praiseworthy. Allah give us that anger. In one of the hadith, Prophet ﷺ says that a believer is such, a good believer is such that he gets angry very quickly, but he also calms down very quickly as well. Certain things make us angry, but the person realizes, no, I can't get angry. And he also calms down very quickly. And you get some people that they get angry very quickly and their anger stays for a long time. And you get some people that don't get angry at all. So you have to have balance and have the right type of anger for the right purpose and for the right time and right reasons. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us ability to act upon what has been heard and what has been mentioned. Allahumma ameen, subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanakallah, bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة ما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا رب.